What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. Pretty quick video here today, but this is some pretty big news that we got here today, posted by Neo Cards and Comics, as well as the 99 Newsstand. And this is the update and final iteration of the new PSA labels for grading comics. So what you can see on the screen here was a post by Neo Cards and Comics. I've also got a couple stories that were posted by the 99 Newsstand that are showing the new versions of these labels, and this is the final version of these labels. We've also been told that PSA is going to start accepting comic submissions, I believe around July 14th or so, mid-July. It was somewhere in one of these comments. You can go through and check for that. But I thought we'd talk about this a little bit. We look at the comments, see what people have to say about the new label, and talk about one other big change that PSA is making. You can see here on the top here, it says from Neo Cards and Comics, new PSA comic book label, including a new gold label, which I'll show you in a second. They have also eliminated the 9.9 grade. So what is going to be the ultimate market impact of PSA, who likely will ultimately grow into a pretty big player in this space, of eliminating the 9.9? Is that going to end up having an impact on what CGC does with the 9.9? Will CGC continue with the 9.9 long term? Will they ultimately change to what PSA is doing? I have no idea. But here's the 9.8. You can see this is a pretty big shift from what we saw with the label design last year. And so last year you had the design that looked almost exactly like their cards, where you had the smaller PSA logo in the middle, but now you can see they've moved that PSA logo to the left-hand side. It's much larger. It's where the other grading companies have their actual grade. Then we've got, kind of the same, everything else looks pretty much the same style font, same size, similar size grade, everything like that. I feel like the font comes across as small, like difficult to read. I mean, you can see my comment right here. I said, honestly, I don't like it, but we all know the label design complaints are just the excuse people like to use to justify not sending to CBCS. What it'll come down to are the sales numbers for the books. If they sell for as much or more than CGC, everyone will suddenly have no problems with the label. And yeah, maybe I'm being a bit cynical there, but that's what I think. I think people just like to complain about the CBCS labels because they don't want to admit that they send to CGC because of the money. I mean, I'm pretty open about it. I send to CGC because the books sell for more. It has nothing to do with the label. I don't like the CBCS label, but that's not why I'm not sending there. I'm sending to CGC because the books sell for more. And the same thing will come out. And I mentioned this when we talked about PSA like a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever. The same thing will be true with PSA. If ultimately PSA slabs ended up selling for more, they would start getting my business. So that's really what it's going to come down to in terms of grading for me, because that's one of the big reasons I'm getting books graded. I buy and sell comic books. If the demand is there for PSA slabs, that's where that's where I'm going to go to get those books graded. But before we start talking about the comments, here's the 10. So this is also something I don't know. I mean, again, like, I don't like that design. I don't like that change in color there for this, just for the 10. But like I said, ultimately, it's not going to matter all that much to me. And in reality, I'm like, me personally, I'm not dealing in books that are going to get 10s. I'm much more into vintage books, older books, that kind of thing. So this really isn't going to be something that's going to matter to me. It's kind of like those the specialized holofoil grades that CBCS started doing with their new labels, and it was like on 9.9s and 10s, and it's like those just aren't grades I'm dealing with, so it just doesn't really matter to me. But if we want to check out the 9.9 newsstands or Manu's posts, he's got a couple different pictures here. One is a Giant Size X-Men 1 with that 3.5 grade, and the other here is I'd say this is a better image of the Spider-Man 1 with that PSA 10 grade. And like I said, there is no 9.9. Now, if you don't remember what the original PSA label looked like, here, let's go back to this one real quick. This is the PSA page still has the old label design on it. So this is what the original PSA label design, for the most part, looked like. You can see the PSA name in the middle. It looks just like their cards. This is what they've ultimately decided on. I mean, I honestly, I probably liked the other one more just because it was something a little different. But I mean, the reality is, like I said, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think it ultimately is going to come down to the sales numbers on those books. Now, the reason why I thought that they would stick with something that was a lot closer to the card design was to have that continuity in the display between graded, say, magazines like sports magazines and cards. But I mean, I kind of get it too. The CGC originally had their cards using the same label design as their comics, and like that looked terrible. And so they ultimately changed the label design for their cards, and those have done very well since then. They don't get the same sales numbers and everything as PSA, but a lot of people are submitting to CGC for cards. But yeah, so there's a couple, examples of what these new labels are going to look like. And you can still buy some of the original PSA labels. They're out on eBay when they had those promotional labels that were done. For example, like this one right here. So this was the design at one point, and now obviously it is ultimately shifted to this new design. But let's start getting into some of those comments. Just see what people have to say. We got Swaggle House Comics just giving it the eye, checking it out. We got Kamikaze, just some surprise faces. We got Red Giant Comics saying he was kind of hoping for the old school grades, VG Fine, Mint, that kind of thing, but it does not look like we're going that way. Como Comics, well, I don't like that. I'm in the same, like I said, I'm in the same vein, but ultimately I don't think it's going to matter. The 9.9 is dumb. Good for them. That's one area that I think is going to be really interesting, because where are those 9.9s going to go? Like the grade ultimately with CGC still exists. And so if you were going to pretend a 9.9 with CGC, is that going to become a 9.8 with PSA, or is it going to become a 10 with PSA? I don't really know. And so I imagine it's going to probably lean towards the 10. But is that going to upset people that you're going to have a 10 potentially that has some minor fraying to one of the corners? I mean, what's going to ultimately be the 10 grade guidance for PSA? That's something that'll be really interesting to see if PSA puts out any type of rules or guidance on how they're specifically grading those, because for cards, they do have some guidance out there on how they do that, like percentages of borders that can be, like how off center it can be, that kind of thing. And it will be interesting to see if we get similar guidance from them on comics. But let's keep going. Horrible. Nope, not going to use them. C. Spalding says, I like it, different and simple. I hope they bring some competition to the market. If they can grade accurately and not damage the books, I'll definitely give them a try. It's such a low bar. Accurate grading and no book damage is such a low bar. Josh's Comic Book says, I hope they go in a different direction. Well, they won't be, because this is the final design. So this is what it's going to be, at least for the immediate future. RH Midwest Comics says the labels are okay. Will all come down to what value these command throughout the hobby. I love the fact that they eliminated the 9.9. So our RH Midwest Comics and I are on the same page. It really is going to come down, in my opinion, to the value of the books. And then magically people just won't care what the labels actually look like. We've got, I don't love the design or the lack of design of the label. It looks like they paid someone $20 off Fiverr to design it. Are they going to get people not, or are they trying to get people not to use them? Finally, some news. Do PSA cases have UV protection? And the answer from Neo Cards and Comics was yes, 99.9%. Now, that's actually something else I wanted to comment on real quickly. That's one of the things that it makes me a little nervous, because at least from that video that Mickey or Swaggle House Comics did, that was about it was like a Reddit post, one of the comic book collecting subreddit posts, where someone did a analysis on a bunch of different UV protective cases for comics. And basically what it showed is all of them did nothing. that if you left them out in the sun for like 30 days, basically, all of them faded horribly. And so I'm a little worried that even if something has quote UV protection, it's still going to fade. And so is this, with it advertising as being UV protected, are people going to leave their comics in the sun and it ultimately end up fading them out? So just something to be aware of, that if you haven't seen that video, you haven't seen that post, those UV protective products that are out there right now don't really protect you. Maybe they buy you like 24 hours or something, maybe because that person left it out for 30 days, it just overpowered it, everything. But maybe they buy you a little bit. But the reality is those products, at least, and I can't speak to PSA's product, it's not out there yet. But those products, at least, they claim protection, and then they were, books were fading in them. So that just makes me a little nervous that we may have people think that the books are going to be safe. They'll put them up on their shelf in the sun and then forget about them. And a couple weeks later, or a month later, they're all of a sudden all faded. Tim, the treasure hunter, says it's not for me, but I'm sure card fans will like it. That's right. I'm not sure, because it's a different design than the card. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Sunset Subset says, I collect 9.9 specifically. Tell them no. Did they manage to, Eggplant Comics says, did they manage to make it worse looking? I don't know. I'll still give it a try, I guess. This person says they did not like it. Opportunity to stand out in a label design and take a fresh new direction. Total failure, missed the mark. Those labels are hideous. It's weird to be hoping that one mega conglomerate takes down another mega conglomerate, but at least one listens and actually wants to make things better. Wait till GameStop buys them out. It won't get better. So, I mean, you can see generally the feeling is that the labels are, people don't like them. That's pretty much the general trend I'm getting here. But like I said at the beginning, I don't think it ultimately is going to make a difference if the sales numbers are there. And people will conveniently forget that they didn't like the labels, or they might grow on people. I mean, the reality is, like, this 10 thing, like, if you don't like this design with the gold 10, it's really only going to be a factor for you if you're like an ultra modern collector. Otherwise, this is the label you're getting, and I mean, it's not that bad. I don't think it's that bad. And I think just people in general are maybe overreacting a bit. I don't like it as much as like the CGC labels, but I don't know. We'll see. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? What do you think about this label? What do you think about PSA eliminating the 9.9 and the impact that might have on CGC, CBCS, in the future, with how they're going to grade books and ultimately the values of some of those books and, from CGC and CBCS? Like, is it going to hurt the value of 9.9s that are out there today? I have no idea, but it is going to be interesting to follow as this all unfolds over the next months and years, as more of these books get graded, as more of them come up for sale, and we get to see actual numbers long term. Because absolutely at the beginning, I expect the prices on the PSA slabs to probably be higher, but that's why I'm going to want to wait a bit, just because people are going to be excited about them, that kind of thing. I want to see where everything levels out and we see how they compare to CGC books and CBCS books. But again, let me know in the comments what you think about all this, and I will see you on the next one.